Drawing from Imagination, Lesson 5, Constructing Curvilinear Solids. Before starting this lesson, please have the following materials ready: sketch pad, tracing paper, ebony pencil, mechanical pencil or number 2 writing pencil, eraser, protractor, circle and ellipse templates, tape or clips. And note, sharpen your number 2 and ebony pencils before the lesson and as often as you need to throughout the lesson. The subject is ellipses and curvilinear solids. Keep track of assignments. Do each exercise in order in your sketchbook or sketchpad. On each page, write your name and the number of the exercise, for example, I-5A. Also, after doing the assignments, remember to take photos of each page of drawings you did for this lesson. In the last lesson, you learned to construct cubes and were introduced to other rectilinear solids, wedges, and pyramids. Here, we'll apply skills you've already learned to draw curvilinear forms, cylinders, cones, and spheres. At the end, we'll combine forms to make more complicated constructions from imagination. First, let's do more circles and ellipses. Exercise I-5A. Practice circles and ellipses. Time. Materials: ebony pencil on sketchpad, circle and ellipse templates. Subject: circles and ellipses. Remember when you first learned to draw circles and ellipses? They should be easier now, but there's always room for improvement. As you did before, draw more with your arm than your hand and wrist. Work from your shoulder as much as possible. Draw first in the air, then on paper, letting your lines flow around continuously and freely. When you draw circles, imagine a point your line is circling around and try to keep all points on the circumference the same distance from that point. Okay, start. and stop. Now let's go on to ellipses. This time, keep the major and minor axes in mind. These warm-ups will be similar to ones you've done before, but with some twists to help you prepare for the next exercises. For one thing, all the ellipses will be drawn inside the circles you just made, with the outermost ends of each ellipse touching a point along the circle. Apart from that, the ellipses vary in several ways, creating different three-dimensional effects. Try at least 2 of them, but do as many as time allows. Number 1. Draw several ellipses varying in eccentricity, but with each ellipse touching the same points at the top and bottom of the circle. Number 2. Draw some horizontal ellipses, each touching the midpoints on the sides of the circle. Vary their eccentricity in the same way as in number 1. Number 3. Draw a series of vertical ellipses across the circle, each touching the circumference at their top and bottom curves. They should all have the same degree of eccentricity, but change in size as they go along. Start the smallest ones on the outside of the circle, then make each one larger until the middle. Number 4. Do the same with horizontal ellipses. Use the same approach to drawing ellipses as you did with circles. Let your lines flow and correct as you go, keeping the major and minor axes in mind. Okay, start. and stop. In the exercises you just did, you probably noticed that the ellipses were adding a sense of volume to the circle, like the longitude and latitude lines circling the globe. Now we'll build on these skills to draw more curvilinear forms. Engineers, inventors, and industrial designers often have to draw ellipses when formulating their creative ideas. For example, somebody might have used ellipses to envision and communicate the idea for this invention, the Q drum, which helped thousands in Africa to survive water shortages. You don't have to be a professional engineer or designer to have good ideas, but you may need their drawing skills to form ideas and get them across to others. The next exercises will help you draw convincing cylinders, cones, and spheres. They're based on a simple rectangular solid similar to the ones we drew last time, but using a different projection system. It's called isometric. Instead of looking straight on at the front of the box as in orthographic or oblique systems, we're looking at a corner with each side angling back at 30 degrees. Ellipses drawn on the surfaces are meant to represent circles seen at various angles. With a few additions, these ellipses can be extended out into cylinders and cones. Exercise I-5B, constructing cylinders and cones in isometric cubes. Time, 20 minutes. Materials, sketch pad, tracing paper, mechanical or number 2 writing pencil, protractor, eraser, tape or clips. Subject, cylinders and cones in cubes. In these exercises, we'll use the protractor to make it easier to draw basic forms and use tracing paper to draw one image over another. First, construct an isometric cube following the steps illustrated in this sequence. Note, be sure all lines of the cube are the same length. First, draw a horizontal baseline at the bottom of the page. Then construct a vertical line in the middle for the front edge of the cube. Okay, start. Next, use the protractor to draw two diagonal lines off the bottom of the center line, both at 30-degree angles. Okay, start. Then, erect vertical lines at each corner the same length as the one in the center. Finally, complete the top of the cube with 4 more diagonal lines, making sure to keep all parallel lines in the same set parallel with one another. Like orthographic and oblique drawings, isometric drawing is a paraline system. Okay, start. The next step is to draw the back edge and bottom of the cube, still keeping each set of lines parallel, as if you could see through the box. Okay, start. Finally, mark off the midpoints on every edge, top and bottom, and front and back sides. These points will be needed for the upcoming steps. Okay, start. And stop. Now that you've drawn the cube, use it to construct a cylinder. To keep things neat, make a new drawing on tracing paper, taping or clipping it down over the cube drawing so it doesn't move. Then draw ellipses on the top and bottom planes of the cube. Make sure they fill the surface by just touching the midpoints on each side, then maintain a continuous curve all the way around with no flat spots, lumps, or pointed ends. Okay, start. After drawing the ellipses, connect them with vertical lines on either side. As shown in the illustration, the line representing the outer edge of the cylinder, called the jacket, flows into the bottom line, meeting at a tangent point. OK, start. And stop. After finishing the cylinder inside the cube, add a cone inside the cylinder, still working on the same piece of tracing paper. First, locate the apex of the cone in the center of the top plane of the cube, as with the pyramid in the last lesson. Then draw lines from the center point to the outer edges of the bottom ellipse, being careful just to touch the edge of the ellipse. Don't let the lines cross one another. As with the cylinder, the outside lines making up the jacket meet the ellipse at tangent points, but on the cone, they aren't at the far edge of the ellipse because the jacket of the cone comes in at an angle. OK, start. And stop. Besides practicing straight lines again, when you draw the diagonal lines that form the jacket or outside edge of the cone, you're working on another skill, making symmetrical forms. Drawing this way, you can sense the volume of the cone between the lines and the balance between the two sides. If one side seems too wide or narrow, make adjustments. The final exercise lets you combine the skills and concepts you just learned with the ones from the previous lesson to make a more complicated construction, a birdhouse. The lesson comes from Brian Curtis's book, Drawing from Observation, but these birdhouses were really drawn from imagination. Exercise I-5C, Imaginary Birdhouses. Time, sketches 5 minutes, and final drawing 15 minutes for a total of 20 minutes. Materials, sketch pad and tracing paper, ebony pencil, mechanical or number 2 writing pencil, eraser, tape, or clips. Subject, imaginary birdhouses. As these examples show, you shouldn't be designing ordinary birdhouses, so let your imagination run wild. Start with quick sketches in your sketch pad, using the mechanical pencil to generate different ideas, putting together the techniques you just learned in inventive ways. It might also help to think of a mood or concept. Make the house funny, fanciful, or spooky like in a Tim Burton movie. Alternatively, imagine what kind of bird might live in your house or a specific neighborhood where the birdhouse will be built. Whatever helps to spark a creative idea. Then try to draw what you envision, taking advantage of all the skills you've learned so far. Note that these birdhouse drawings are from students in a full semester drawing class with significantly more experience and skills than you're expected to have. So let their ideas inspire, but don't feel discouraged if you're not yet able to execute your ideas as well. Also, those drawings are more finished technically and were probably begun as sketches. That's what you're supposed to be doing now, so these drawings should be loose and free without worrying too much about how they look. These examples from industrial design show how the sketching process is used to generate ideas, then to develop and communicate them. The first ones were drawn spontaneously, without judging if the idea was good or bad, possible or impossible. This engaged the creative attribute called fluency we worked on before. Sketch 3 different ideas in the 5 minutes. Okay, start. and stop. Now select one design or a combination to develop further, as in these examples. To develop your sketch into a more finished drawing, go back to the skills and concepts you learned for making geometric solids and incorporate all that seem appropriate. As with the house you drew before, build the main structure first, but here it doesn't have to be built from a cube. It could start with a cylinder, cone, or sphere. Once you've got the big shapes, attach secondary ones, extensions out the side, etc. Also add holes for the birds to come in or out and perches for them to perch on. Finally, add details and decorations, anything you can imagine. Whatever you do, practice your three-dimensional construction drawing skills and see how far you can stretch them. Okay, start. And stop. This lesson challenged your imagination and put your new drawing skills to the test. But if you had trouble picturing some of your ideas, don't worry. You're making progress, and the next lessons will review skills you just learned while adding new ones. Before you quit for the day, check that each page of drawings is labeled with your name and the number of the exercise, and be sure you've taken a photo of each page of drawings for each assignment.